Hi everyone, this is Alex coming at you here from Southern California. A little different camera angle here. Just want to do more of a flip video. What we're listening to right now is this wonderful record by an artist called Sarah Davachi. The title is Gave in Rest. This was released just a couple months ago. That's Sarah. She's a Canadian electronic music artist based out of Los Angeles now. I would call this spiritual ambient. I think the cover really kind of captures that. I meant to see her live a couple of weeks ago. I bought tickets. Unfortunately, I was not able to make it, but very interesting, talented artist. She's already put out a half a dozen things, mostly on vinyl too. So if you run across any of her stuff, mostly small presses, but I think this could be kind of a breakout album of hers. Relatively speaking, of course, it's a kind of a niche type of music, but it's outstanding. Definitely check it out. So I wanted to do on this video is to highlight, one of my favorite artists and an artist that I found about largely through the VC, especially through Fred's videos and Anthony Camploni's, and in particular. And the artist is Heldon, led by French guitarist Richard Pinhas. He was born in 1951 in France. And I just wanted to show off the records that I've collected over the last number of years. Each one of these records is highly recommended. He's really an artist who has no weak records, and despite being highly prolific, the quality of the work is incredibly consistent. So this is his first album on Disjunta Records, which was his own record label. This is from 1974. This is an original pressing. There's the label. So his first two records were on his own label. He later sold it in 1975. So from the first note of this album, you hear what is a distinctly unique sound that he has and that he masters. All of these records that I'm going to show are from a 9-year period, from 1974 through about 1982. And when you think about the quality and volume of work that he was putting out, it's pretty staggering. Just amazing combination. Of course, he's a fantastic guitarist, and he does electronics on most of these albums as well. He's absolutely one of my favorite guitar players, and really unmatched during the 70s as far as his innovation, and specifically his combination of electronics, noise, improvisation, and kind of what I dub kind of French progressive, French krautrock, if you will. This particular record, it says here, dedicated to Robert Wyatt. So the sound, as most of you guys know, it's a often menacing, repetitive, and very melodic and beautiful at the same time. So this album really kind of has a lot of that, even though it's only his first one. his second record, Heldon 2, subtitled Ale Tela. I'm not exactly sure who or what Tela is. It's also an original on his own label, Disjunta. Here's the gatefold. There's Mr. Richard Pinhas himself. Now the group consists primarily of drummer Francois Auger, Patrick Gauthier on Moog keyboards and other electronics, and Didier Batard on bass. There were different variations. Sometimes it's only a trio, sometimes it's the four, sometimes, as you'll see later on, it's just Pinhas himself doing most of the instrumentation, and sometimes there's a few additional, mostly, if not exclusively, French players that come in and out of these records. So this is 1975. An amazing album that really sort of a proto post-rock, as many of these records are, really foretelling a lot of what would happen in the 90s. Another thing to note about all of these records is that there's not a single word. There is no singing, there are no vocals on any of these records. So it really, he really laid a template for instrumental music to come through the 80s, 90s, and today. The artist that I mentioned at the beginning, Sarah Davachi, she's got a radio show online, and she plays a lot of Heldon for sure. I mean, his influence remains very much in the present. He's still active. He's in his late 60s, and he has actually been reissuing a lot of these records that, at least in the U.S., are pretty rare. In Europe, I think they're a little more common. This is his third record, just titled Third, also from 1975. Beautiful artwork. This is the only double LP of his 70s output. Fantastic gatefold here. There's a song here called Cocaine Blues. I don't know if it was in reference to, the classic Cocaine Blues song from the 40s, but of course it sounds nothing like it. It's an amazing electronic piece that just builds and builds and builds over, I think, something like 7 or 8 minutes. There's a piece also in here called Zind Destruction, that is mostly him on solo guitar, just fuzzy, distorted. His style of playing it's not wanky, but it certainly can come off that way in certain tracks like that one, but he does it in a way that's so thoughtful and tasteful and controlled in a way that it really never seems excessive, and the electronics just really take it up to the next level. So that's Third. This one is on the French Urus label. Here's the label. So in '75, he sold his Disjunta label, I think, to his studio manager, and so that was the label that put out that record. Next we have Un rêve sans conséquence spéciale, which means a dream without any special consequence. And another thing about all of his records, the artwork is unique, distinctive on every record. And again, I think that just speaks of his attention to detail, not only in the music, but also of the work as a piece of art, including the cover. So this is from 1976. This one is on the French Cobra label, one of my favorite label designs of all time, with the snake. Strangely, this was also issued in the US in the Inner City label, so this is one of the few ones that you can find from time to time in the US for pretty cheap. So definitely, if you see that on the Inner City label and it's cheap, grab it. Fantastic. Next we have Heldon 4, subtitled Agneta Nilsson. Again, striking, beautiful artwork. And again, this one is, I believe, is on the Eurus label again. Sorry about the glare there. This one, also very atmospheric, a little bit more laid back. I think there's maybe some acoustic guitar on this one, if I recall. But again, you got Gautier on the Mini Moog. Now here we got Alain Belèche on bass, not Didier Betard. And then on drums, also not the regular drummer François Auger, but Coco Roussel. So a little bit different lineup on this one. Next we have Heldon 6 interface. Now I'm not sure why there was not a Heldon 5. He goes from 4 to 6, but this is from 1977. This is also on the Cobra, French Cobra label. Oh, lost the focus a little bit there. Sorry about that. There's the gatefold there. Some real 70s looks going on there. So this is mostly your trio of Auger on drums, Gautier on bass, and Pinhas here on Moog, in addition to guitar. This one, side 2, is the title track. The entire side is the title track interface, which is absolutely killer. One of the classic Heldon tracks, and really just driving and percussive and hypnotic. It's fantastic. I think it's about 19 minutes long or so. So yeah, I think a lot of folks think this is one of his best efforts. Now, this one is Standby from 1979. This is on the French, on the Egg label. I think I've shown this one in a video before. So this is his last record under the Heldon name. Another thing that is pretty obvious by now is this thread of science fiction themes, which obviously ties into the space rock aesthetic of the music. It's very sort of retro futuristic, Again, this one, and I think Fred just showed this one in his last video, and Fred, he said it was his favorite. It's pretty hard to argue with that. I mean, this one really kind of is a culmination of a lot of the ideas that he had explored, starting in 1974, and this one being his last under the Heldon name in 1979. There's some interesting sort of proto stoner rock, almost Melvins-like things that are going on in this one. Proggy at times, like I said, proto metal things going on here. Just really, really good record. Now on to the sort of his solo records. And interesting, he was so prolific. He was working on some of these solo albums at the same time that he was putting out records under the Heldon moniker. This one is from 1977, his first solo effort, Rhizosphere. Not sure if I've shown this one before. This one is also on the French Cobra label. I would say in general, in the solo stuff, he's kind of exploring, lost focus, there we go, more maybe dark ambient material, less percussion, more electronics, a little bit darker moods in general on this one in particular. Again, incredible, very thoughtful choices on the artwork. The next one is from the year after, 1978. This is Chronolise. This one is on again on the Cobra label. Now this one does have, I believe, I think side 2 there's some tracks with percussion, so this one maybe sounds a little bit more like it's sort of like one half solo, more like his solo output, and then the side 2 is maybe a little bit more like a Heldon album. There's a track on here, Paul Atreides, that is fantastic, kind of more in that Heldon vein. Just the Cobra label again. Paul Atreides, the track being named after a character from the science fiction novel Dune. So again, the science fiction motifs. This is Iceland from 1979. This is on the French Polydor label. I know Chris Cole, John Coltrane 68, he prefers this one from all of his solo LPs, and it's hard to disagree. It really is a beautiful record, very atmospheric, as the title would suggest, painting some icy landscapes, and very soundtrack like, at times actually evoking some of the other great film composers of that time, like John Carpenter and Alan Howarth. A lot of incredible synths on here, very cinematic stuff. And a lot of these records, and especially some of the late 70s, early 80s stuff is still fairly accessible. I mean, like I said, hard to find in the US, but if you pay a little bit for the shipping, you can generally find these kinds of records for $10-15, and then you just have to kind of bite it on the shipping. The last one I have of his, and I think might be the last one that where he is solo. This is from 1982 lithique. This one I got fairly recently. I was blown away. I mean, this is actually, it's amazing how consistent he is through these 9 years. More proggy maybe, sometimes evoking some sort of video game type electronics here. A lot of textures here. This on the UK label I wasn't familiar with. Pulse. Not sure if he moved to the UK later on. It was engineered by Jean-Louis Rizet, of course, of another great French electronic artist. And also arranged by Jean-Louis Rizet, actually. So yeah, that's all I had for today. Yeah, let me know what your favorite Heldon or Pinhas efforts are. I know he continues to collaborate with a lot of modern avant-garde and electronic artists to this day. I know there's quite a few CDs and LPs that he's put out over the last 15-20 years, so I definitely want to check some of that more recent output out. So if you have any tips, let me know. Again, yeah, thanks VC for expanding my horizons with Mr. Pinhas. Take care, guys.